Okay. There we go. And now go over to Facebook. Get started. Yeah, I think we're good. All right. Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Patrick Millikin from the Poison Pen, and we're here with another of our virtual events. And I've been looking forward to this for an awfully long time. I've been a fan and kind of an email friend of our tonight's guest, William Boyle, who has written a number of fantastic novels, including this new one, Shoot the Moonlight Out, which is just a remarkable novel. And Bill has been kind enough to sign a bunch for us, although I may have to send you some more. So I'll try to put a link in the comments field if you'd like to purchase a copy. But welcome, Bill. It's great to finally meet you, albeit virtually.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Patrick. Yeah, so good to finally meet you. It seems like it's been a while. I hope one day when things are totally kind of back to normal, I can come out to the store and be there in person.
Yeah,
I'd really love that.
Definitely. It's funny. I think it was Ace Atkins, our mutual friend, who originally turned me on to your books a number of years ago, and he gave me a copy of this right here, Gravesend. Had you sign it for me, and I was hooked, man. I really loved it, and you remind me of a friend of ours. Well, the hell with it. I'm going to bring him in. Surprise, surprise. Let's see. He'll come on the screen here. See if you can guess who I'm talking about.
I think I got a good idea.
You think so? Yeah, there he is.
How's it going?
Hey, Willie, how's it going, man?
Good. I think all right. I think I fucking figured it out, man. How you guys
Good to
doing?
see you. Good, man. How are you doing?
Congratulations.
Thanks, man. Thanks.
What are you drinking?
I'm drinking that Bob Dylan whiskey.
Oh man, it's funny. I hit Willie up. I knew you guys were friends, and mutual admiration society, and just kindred spirits in so many ways. And so I'm really delighted, Willie, that you were able to. I know you guys are getting ready to practice tonight, aren't you?
Yeah, we're starting up again, and this our first practice, so it should be a train wreck in the in the making.
Yeah, I love the new song, man. It's so good. I can't wait for the record.
Oh, cool, man. Thanks. Yeah, I'll send it to you when I get my copies.
Thanks.
Yeah,
man.
for those of you watching, Willy Vlautin, of course, is the author of numerous books, including The Night Always Comes. We had a fun conversation about it when it first came out earlier this year. Founding member of Richmond Fontaine and the D-Lines, and just an all-around cool guy.
Best.
So you guys did I really enjoyed the interview that you did with Bill for the Southwestern Review, and I had a good time reading that. And was that fun to do?
Well, I mean, for me, it was. I mean, I get a little nervous because he's a smarter guy than me, and so that always makes you nervous. But yeah, I mean, I had a ton of questions I wanted answered, and he's got the best taste in music and books, so it was I wrote down a lot of what he said and have been plowing through it musically right now, like Garland. Yeah, like you're the inspiration for the title, Garland Jeffries. Can you talk a little bit about him?
Yeah.
About how you got that title?
Yeah.
And him as an artist and his relationship to New York City, which is so important to you.
Yeah, and I mean, that interview is so much fun to do. Thanks for doing it, man. And I always say Willie's my favorite writer, and I got to interview him earlier this year when The Night Always Comes came out, and it was really cool that we flipped it, and he asked such great questions about my book. So thanks for doing that, man. I appreciate it. And yeah, Garland Jeffries, I don't remember exactly when along the way I discovered him, but it was definitely through hearing Lou Reed talk about him. They were kind of in the same orbit. And so I got into him pretty much right away when I heard the record Ghostwriter, and just kind of fell in love. And I thought it was, like Lou Reed and Jim Carroll, just kind of this sounded like New York in a way that not a lot of other stuff did to me or does to me. So, I kind of just fell in love with his music and returned to it a lot. And Shoot the Moonlight Out is a song on his record, American Boy and Girl. And it was just one of those titles, that I wanted to use it. I wanted to use it for something. And I sat down and I started working and just kind of let ideas spark off of that title and just kind of ran from there. So it was just such an evocative title to me. And just kind of, I felt like it established tone and atmosphere just with those few words. And so I kind of just let that wash over me and went to work.
It sounds like it could have been on a David Goodis paperback, that
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I definitely was thinking about that Goodis, the Moon in the Gutter, and
Right.
that kind of it had that sort of feeling to me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I mean, not to be, I don't know, but I mean, but so many of the characters are shooting out their only hope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, from Bobby to Greg to Charlie and Max. I mean, and Jack himself. All these main characters, or side characters too, seem to self-sabotage themselves in these kind of really tricky and complex ways.
Yeah, I definitely, and that's one of the cool things I think about having the title right out of the gate, is that you kind of, can resonate throughout all of the work as you're doing it. So I think I was feeling that as I was writing it. And I think I just kind of write about desperate people people on the ropes, people stuck in bad situations or wanting to get out. And a lot of them are, like you said, kind of self-destructive or shooting down their only chances. So yeah, I mean, I definitely felt that throughout the process of working on the book.
There's a strand that kind of, connective tissue, I think, between both of you guys. And, and Willy, when you were doing that interview, you brought attention to just to Bill's sense of humanity in his work, and the sense of empathy for some of these characters that kept coming back. And that really reminded me of your own stuff, that same kind of attention to, what might be considered minor characters, but I don't know.
I mean, for me, it was, and I told you this earlier, like, just like a side character like Greg is so interesting in that he's a pretty common person. Sadly, he's a pretty common character in the world, and in novels, which is the junkie that can get swayed just by leaning on him a little bit. He's going to get changed and swayed and beat up and used. And but you, in such a short amount of time, you had the ability to make him empathetic, to make it feel like the first time I've ever read anything about this stuff. And it was remarkable. But also, like, one of your main characters, Jack, who I guess you could call him in a way, he's a vigilante, or just a really damaged guy trying to make right of a horrible thing that's happened to him. But he's really empathetic in a really slow, weird way. And the whole time you're reading about him, you just want, like, I want to go to his house and fix it up for him. Because you can just feel like that he's just kind of slowly disappearing day by day. And it's not like he's doing anything dramatic. Well, he is doing stuff dramatic, but in his personal life, he's just letting things break slowly.
It's just that weight of grief.
The weight of grief. Yeah.
Got to send a few of your house painters over there.
Well, thanks. Yeah, man. I feel like I owe a lot of that to Willy's books. Honestly, I think there have been other books in my life that had an impact on me in that way. I think, both Willie and I love William Kennedy and love Ironweed in particular, I think. And that was a book that really opened up a lot of things for me. But I think, when I started really focusing on writing novels, I was really kind of caught up in dark, almost nihilistic stuff, and really had a pretty, just brutal, I wanted my stories to be more brutal and less full of hope. And reading Willie's books, always kind of, just kind of taught me something that you could have the dark stuff, but it was good to have some hope crawling in there. And I think, the last couple of books in particular, but maybe this one most of all, I think I was kind of really under the sway of that and trying to do more with that and trying to just, get to that place of empathy and humanity.
What's that? It's that kind of idea that the more light you let in, the harder the darkness hits,
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I remember you saying when we were talking that you saw The Grifters, the movie The Grifters, based on the Jim Thompson novel at age 12. And I was wondering, like, what did you, I mean, it must have affected you because you remembered it, but was that like
old.
What's that?
That makes me feel old, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no shit. But did that resonate to you in a way that you, even back then, you knew you wanted to write that kind of stuff, or you were just drawn to that kind of stuff, that kind of crime, desperation world that you live in?
Yeah. it was, I think part of it was luck that, I would just kind of read and rent movies, kind of whatever looked cool to me from a pretty young age. And the early 90s was just a good time for that kind of neo-noir stuff. It was just, especially like, 90 to 95 or whatever. So I just kind of got lucky that I was of an age where I was getting excited about trying different things when I went to the video store, and not just like, getting Back to the Future again or whatever. And so I got lucky, that when I was 12, 13 or whatever I think I was 12 when I saw The Grifters. Certainly, like, that was a big year for me. Like, that was the same year I saw Blue Velvet. That was the same year I saw a lot of stuff. I don't know what I think I just thought it was cool. I think I thought, I responded to the style. I responded to the characters. I liked the darkness. I liked, the kind of dark humor in the Grifters. It's hard for me to imagine what exactly I was responding to as a kid. I know, I can tell you certainly, like with Blue Velvet, I remember watching it, and then I remember thinking, I watched it on a Saturday afternoon, and then I went to church with my family after that, and like nothing was ever the same. Like I never saw the world the same way again. So I think that was also it. It was probably just like totally shattering. That stuff was just shattering my worldview and shattering the things I thought I knew. And I was excited at that point to, read. I was reading a lot of novelizations probably. So I probably didn't know the difference between like a novelization and, Jim Thompson, but I just got lucky that I wanted to read that book, and I got that book and loved it. And then I fell in love kind of with the prose. I think, I think I was responding to something in the prose immediately, because it was unlike anything I was reading in school or generally unlike anything I was encountering.
Can you imagine, you guys, going into a drugstore in the 1950s and finding The Killer Inside Me on the spinner rack and
amazing,
saying, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Incredible.
No, it's amazing. Yeah, it's amazing to think about that. Like what one of those racks must have been like, the writers on there. Just incredible.
Yeah. Right.
Hey, I got another question for you that I think I keep going back to, because I think I've been thinking about this because your ensemble kind of cast of characters. I mean, you're one of the best writers at juggling that that I can recall right now. And I was just wondering, like, I mean, it's really tricky, I think, on a bunch of different levels. One level is you have such a danger of losing the flow of a novel. The other one is you can see like the writer pulling the story along. You can it brings a writer into it. The marionette, yeah, totally. And so I was wondering, how did you start working that way? Or have you always worked that way, kind of like even in the beginning?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think probably in the beginning when I was probably trying to write just in first person and realizing
is there a degree of improvisation involved? I wanted to follow up on Willie's question, because there is an improvisatory feel to some of the scenes, and that's in a good way.
No, I think there's definitely an improvisatory thing going on. I try to plan, especially the last couple of books, I try to plan things out a little bit just so I don't go too far off course, or just go down the wrong road for 200 pages. But I definitely like to be able to just wander and explore within the world of the story and kind of go off track a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I think when I was kind of starting out, I was probably trying to write a lot of stuff in first person, and then I settled into third person, and then I think Gravesend I had three point of view characters, and Lonely Witness I had only one, and then I bounced up to a bunch for A Friend Is a Gift You Give Yourself, and even more for City of Margins, and then I think I'm back down to 5 or whatever for this book. So I mean, it's definitely a way I like to work. It feels like it keeps things from getting stale for me. I just like to be able to move between the characters, and I do like. I mean, I don't mind the sense that somebody might feel like there's a puppet master behind it. I mean, because there is. It's artificial to imagine that there's not. So I kind of like that idea, and I've really, there are a lot of writers. I'm sure I'm going to forget, off the top of my head who they are, but structurally, I think probably the biggest influence on the books has been Robert Altman and Alan Rudolph movies. Just those kind of big sprawling ensemble casts with lives crossing, and that was really something that when I was writing, even with Gravesend, that I just that was how I wanted to tell the story, or try to tell the story. And I kind of saw it in that way and imagined it in that way. But yeah, I mean, even growing up, I think probably Stephen King, a writer like Stephen King had a lot of characters, and you're encountering that stuff, especially in some of those kind of bigger, more epic books. You're encountering that sort of style, that sort of structure. But my thing was just to kind of take it and apply it to a 300-page crime novel that I hoped would both move quickly, but also allow room for getting sidetracked and kind of wandering off course, and having characters talk and just walk, basically.
Yeah, I wanted just to jump in for a second, and just for the people that are watching, the few people out there who aren't familiar with Bill's work, I put the whole ensemble here, these beautiful editions that are out. I don't know, Willie, do you think we could just have our own private little book club without Bill here? We'll just talk about your books, how much we like them. It's funny. I love the sense that, the books aren't a series per se, but some of the characters, you get the sense when you read your books that everybody inhabits the same world, and they're all walking in and out of each other's, realities. And our friend George Pelicanos, I think, did such a fantastic job of doing that early on as well. Even if you read the Nick Stefanos books or the Derek Strange and Terry Quinn, you get a sense this is all one Washington, D.C. And these guys are, walking around together and experiencing it together. You think am I on point in saying that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, those books had a huge impact on me when I discovered them. So I think definitely that was one of my, and certainly I love Richard Price too. And, but those Pelicanos books really opened up that way of seeing, I think, on the page for me, and how rooted they were in place, but how, also some of his books were kind of parts of limited run series or whatever, which I haven't done, but it was, building a mythology of the place, that you could jump around in time and be in one book, be in the 90s, and another book be in the 70s, and kind of, feel the simultaneity of the place and the characters, their histories all wrapped up with their present day. So yeah, I mean, I love George's books, and really that especially like the DC Quartet, when I discovered it, was huge for me.
Yeah.
And just as and I talked a little bit about William Kennedy, but
Yeah, I was
Albany,
just gonna mention him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the Albany trilogy, those were books that literally changed my life as a reader and a writer, and just that was, beyond the trilogy. I mean, I shouldn't call it a trilogy, whatever it is, however many books there are in the cycle now. Just that opened up everything to me, and it was kind of everything that I wanted to do.
Yeah, it's that idea, and you do it really well, which is that idea that inside one community is a universe that's never ending, and there's always another door to go through, or another store down the street that you haven't seen before, that all wraps in, and like William Kennedy did so great, which is just different times, different generations. In one book he writes about the son, in one book he really writes about the father, in Billy Phelan's Greatest Game, and then Ironweed. So I mean, it's like a never-ending world. So when you first started Gravesend, did you think, man, this is a world that's going to be my world, or was it just like a one-off? And then,
I think I had some idea that I'd figured something out, and that I was going to be kind of working in that world, going forward a little bit. That I was going to be staying, either with, in the place, or with characters from the place, and kind of building out from there. So, the first things I wrote after Gravesend were both kind of loosely connected to Gravesend, which I think kind of set some precedent for me, that I was going to be inhabiting the same world, but never really writing a sequel or anything, just kind of coming back to a character who haunted me, or who I thought about, who was, or coming back to something that's briefly mentioned, or, kind of hearing names in the background, or hearing about events that, characters have in common in the background. So I always just kind of liked, it really lent itself to just my sense of, building both a place that's rooted in reality, but also building kind of my imaginary version of the place as I knew it, and also tying that all together with legend and myth and all the stuff that's fascinated me since I was a kid.
Now, this particular book, the new book, I'm horrible about giving away spoilers, so I'm going to try not to do that. But it's set during a very specific time, place and time. It starts out in 1996, and this is at the very opening of the book. But these kind of neighborhood kids, do something really, really, reckless. They're just out having kicks, and something really tragic happens. And then we jump forward 5 years, and I think the character Bobby that Willy alluded to earlier, he was 14 or 15 when the book starts, and then just 5 years later, we see him at 19 or 20 or something like that. I don't know. I don't really have a question for him. Like, can you talk? Yeah, you want to pick up where I left off, Willy?
No, it's just interesting because I was just thinking about the same thing, which is Bobby's such an interesting character. You're right. It's like kids up to malice with no real intention. They're just being kids, but it is pretty rough what they're doing. And it changes both their lives dramatically. And I mean, and the whole focus of Bobby's life shifts forever. And it's what I found interesting is both Jack, who you meet later on, and Bobby are just kind of stuck in this time warp because of tragedy, and they both haven't sought help. They both haven't really come to grips with it. And it's that idea of grief without help. Like you're building a wall around your grief and not letting it out. And it just tears both of them apart. And I think that's so interesting. Were you thinking about those kind of things with Bobby? Because he's such a interesting guy. I thought, I really wanted to jump in the story and grab him a handful of times. Because, it's that idea that when you've done something really bad and you don't deal with it, then you feel like you deserve anything bad that comes your way, and that you kind of shy away from any goodness that you could jump onto. And you see that with Bobby, and it's devastating.
Yeah. I mean, he's where the book, I mean, really the two of those two guys, Bobby and Jack, were where the book started for me. They were the guys that really, when I sat down to work on this, I started with them. I started with that situation, and then that kind of, with Bobby and Zeke throwing those rocks, and that led into Jack, Amelia's dad, kind of trying to deal with this, at first learning about it. So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think I definitely saw them as kind of two sides of something. A young kid who just is kind of heartbroken over the fact that his mom's left, and he's in a family he doesn't really fit into, just doing something stupid, and then that kind of putting him on a path, but also opening up really the whole world of the story, because that's kind of the inciting event that links everybody and everything. And then Jack, just seeing Jack as somebody who was, even before his daughter dies, was already damaged and beat up by losing his wife and losing his parents, and then he loses the only person he's got left, and is really just, is just done. So I saw them kind of both as tragic characters, but trying to deal with things differently, I guess. Ultimately, like, Bobby goes down a little bit of a worse road with some kind of decent detours, I guess, or at least one decent detour. And then Jack is really fighting against his worst impulses. And once he meets this character, Lily Murphy, who he connects with, and is kind of becomes a surrogate daughter for him, I think he kind of can experience some sense of joy or happiness again.
I mean, the interesting thing I thought too was Francesca, Bobby's gal. I mean, her grandmother, if I'm remembering correctly, was so kind of vicious to her, like on a daily, in like a really concerted effort to kind of just slowly destroy her confidence. And I kept thinking about, or I was thinking about today too, which is the idea that Francesca's lack of confidence, or just getting kind of like slowly kind of beaten down at home, is the reason she could fall for a guy or get seduced into thinking a guy like Bobby's the right kind of guy for her too. So in a weird way, it's this kind of like these kind of slow tragedies, quick with Bobby and quick with Jack, but it's the same kind of situation for Francesca, where she's slowly kind of losing herself. I mean, it's hard to live, get up every day and have someone say you're no good. And
isn't grandma kind of getting at her own daughter by getting at Francesca as well?
Yeah.
She's got a lot of hate in her, that lady.
But yeah, but it also, the interesting thing, I think, and it's just pain, like it's the pain of Bobby as a kid, because he doesn't have a mom, and it just sends him off just doing stuff that most people don't get caught doing, childhood pranks. and then, but some do, and it changes their life. But and Francesca too, she's going to be carrying this weight around, which is like, man, I might not be a very good person. Maybe my grandmother's right. She's going to be fighting that voice. And when you're fighting that voice, you tend to drift into people that are just as kind of probably more damaged, and they feel right to hang out with. And so all of a sudden, Francesca's opened up to a darker world with Bobby than she ever imagined. And she just, it was just a boyfriend, and she wanted romance or whatever. And all of a sudden she's in a way bigger situation than she would have ever thought.
Yeah, no, that makes, I mean, that's definitely, and she just, I think, is also just somebody who wants out, and never felt like she belonged in the neighborhood or in her house, even though she gets along with her mom. I guess never belonged in her grandmother's house once they've moved in there. And I think with Bobby, it's just kind of she gets caught up in something that seems good, and then very quickly turns into kind of I think they both have this romantic dream of hitting the road, and Bobby's vision of how to achieve that is a little different, I guess, from Francesca's. But I mean, that's definitely like, pretty, I like writing characters in that at that age, because I just remember that feeling just so well of wanting to get out, wanting to run, the dream of kind of just leaving and traveling across the country, but not really having the means to do it. Or like, I remember the one time I tried to do it when I was like 18 or 19, like I made it like 100 miles, which actually I give this story to Lily in the book, but I made it like a couple of 100 miles, and then my car broke down, and I just like drank a bottle of whiskey and passed out in the back seat until somebody came and picked me up. But I love writing characters that age for that reason, because they just have these big ideas and nothing to make them happen. But Bobby thinks he's got something kind of up his sleeve.
I think what's interesting too is, and maybe it's just the way I read stuff, but it's also like when you're that age, you haven't been crossed or have run into darkness too many times, like too many really bad people, hopefully. And so, and there's more hope in you, and there's more like innocence in you. And it's so heartbreaking when like a kind of an innocent runs into a traumatized. And I've always been interested in that, and like how hard it is at that age too. Like you can get sucked into really bad people with not really knowing it until you're in the middle of it. And I think a little bit Francesca there was probably a romance in Bobby, but there was probably also some kind of sadness or some kind of deeper thing that I would imagine she was attracted to, because she was beat up too.
Yeah. No, I think that's spot on, man.
And you wonder if, had Bobby not done that stupid thing 5 years before, if he would have had it in him to do the second tragic thing, which we won't say, but that happens in the second half of the book. You wonder,
Yeah.
I mean, I was stunned. I was really mad at Bobby for the second thing. And it makes you start thinking like maybe the first thing is was the first marker of his life. Maybe he's just that kind of guy. I mean, I don't know. But I think it's really interesting, because I was really upset with him, and it really shows you, what's inside him too. But also, But also what I think is interesting, and I don't know what you think is, all these people are in such grief. They're kind of drowning in grief, but maybe besides Lily, they don't have an ability to seek help. Why do you think that is? Or do you think I'm right or wrong about that?
No, yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I think it's just, I don't know, it just probably comes down to kind of the people I've known, and the way I see things. I think there's just this impulse I know just to try to avoid stuff or not talk about it, and not definitely not seek help. I mean, especially, this book is set 20 years ago, so I think maybe even then more than now, that would have been still not as easy for people to do, or maybe that older generation wouldn't have been as willing to help the younger generation get the help they needed or whatever. But I think these are all people who, for the most part, except for Lily, who has writing as her way out. They're not gonna go get help.
Yeah, even Lily, because she's got her own problems. And she's being stalked, and that's really intense. But even then, she has the ability to ask Jack, or kind of talk to him, or bring it up at least a little bit. So she has abilities. Yeah, and you can feel that in the book, that she's different.
Well, this is probably actually a good segue to ask you both about, and you talked about it a little bit, but the importance for, because we're all made up of all the music and the books and the films that we've digested. And I've heard you both speak about how, how critically important records and books and movies were to you growing up, And Willy, I knew you grew up in Nevada, right? And did you discover that stuff early on, and it helped you transport yourself away from where you grew up?
Yeah, I mean, I just, my brother played guitar, and he was, a high school guy with maybe 100 records, and he had a stereo that could shake our house. And so I think I always really liked music. But when I remember when I was like 11 or 12, and I could start disappearing into the lyrics, like when there were story songs, then it was like a drug. I was like, I can be somewhere else for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, and I'm not with me, and I could follow the story of it, and I could disappear into it. And for just the kind of guy I was and where I was living and everything, it was a huge drug, the idea of escapism like that. And then movies, the same. If you saw a movie where you fell in love with a girl, or you fell in love with a father figure, or you fell in love with the location, I mean, it would stay with you for weeks. Just that dream. You go to the movie theater, you come home, you go, God, I hope this feeling I have will last forever. And then you're like a junkie, you go out and you have to get the next fix. You got to get the next movie. And it took me longer with novels to find it. Novels are harder to find when you're young, because you just don't know where to look, and they take a long time to figure out which novels to get. It's like you can buy 10 records and figure out in a day which ones you're going to like, and books are different.
What about you, Bill? Same story?
Yeah. I mean, I didn't really have anybody around me who was into good stuff. No knock on no knock on those people, but there was I'm an only child, so I didn't have like any influence. I didn't have like a brother or sister kind of turning me on to stuff. But again, it was for me, it was a lot about libraries and video stores, and then a little bit later, once I started leaving my neighborhood and going into Manhattan, going to record stores, that was when really I kind of started discovering a lot of new music. So it was really just about kind of wandering in those places and picking out things I thought looked cool. And I think, eventually if you're kind of working that hard at it, I was just watching stuff constantly, and then eventually listening to stuff constantly. And I was, kind of reading, I hated reading in school, but I liked reading crime fiction from a pretty young age. So, I would blow off school assignments, but I'd be reading like The Black Dahlia and The Big Nowhere and stuff by 7th grade or, 8th grade. So I think, it was, for me, it was definitely, I like when Willy uses the term disappear into, records, movies, books, whatever, because that's definitely what I was doing. I was kind of, I was a lonely kid. I was an only child. I just was reading and watching as many movies as I could. I was renting probably 10 movies a week from a pretty young age, and just discovering stuff. It was, all obviously, pre-internet. So I wasn't really reading about stuff unless I saw something in a newspaper. So I was just kind of taking chances and figuring out what I liked and why I responded to things. But definitely, when you're a kid, it's like Willie said, it's like, you fall in love with somebody in a movie, or you dream about the location, or you want that actor as your father, or whatever. And the same goes for books. And then with music, I think it was a lot of luck in terms of growing up and kind of having my formative years be the early 90s, that there was a lot of good stuff actually on the radio. And I lived in New York, so I was getting some pretty good stations and getting exposed to some great bands that I might not have otherwise been exposed to, and just kind of falling in love with the kind of mythology of New York City, and listening to Johnny Thunders because, or the Ramones or whatever, because that was New York. I mean, or Lou Reed or Jim Carroll or Sonic Youth or whatever. Later Garland Jeffries when I found him. So it was all just big messy process, really, where I just kind of kept at it and kept working and kept falling in love with stuff.
I'm 52, and I just recently learned that Johnny Thunders got his name from a Kinks song. just found that out.
Yeah. That's right.
I think it's so weird, or interesting to me anyway, how certain kids gravitate towards that. Because there was, like I said, my brother was he was like a normal high school rock and roll kid, but to get so obsessed with that stuff like I did, I was so obsessed with like music and books and records, to the point, and I don't know where that comes from, and maybe a loneliness or but it makes me think of this one that might make you laugh. So I went to Lake Tahoe. I grew up in Reno, and I went to Lake Tahoe, and I was walking with this friend of mine. I was maybe 13. I think I was 13. And we came across this Scottish girl, like a gorgeous, and I didn't fucking know where Scotland was, barely on a map, but she had that accent and everything. And I was so obsessed with music, I just went up to her and I said, "So who do you listen to when you're in Scotland?" And she said, "Japan," like that. She just said it like that. And then she gave me this kind of like snooty thing and walked away. And I go, "Fucking Japan, is that a band?" And then, so I went back to Reno and I called the all these record stores. There's like 3 of them in Reno, and they go, "Yeah, we got some import record by some band, English band called Japan." So I wrote I rode 7 miles on my fucking bike, man. We lived in the hills, and it was, and I got home and it was like art music, it's like, and it's like a really bizarre version of Duran Duran, really, I guess, a really cool band actually. But back when you're that age, and you put it on, and I wasn't like, I'd never seen guys like wear makeup and look really arty and weird, but I was up for it. Like when you're that age too, you're up for like, okay, I'll see what this is. And then you find out, man, this stuff's really cool. And then you think about the Scottish girl listening to it, and all of a sudden, instead of just listening to like the Ramones or the Clash or I was obsessed with the Jam. All of a sudden I'm listening to this really arty music and I'm totally cool with it. And it changed my life, and I had a poster of Japan on my wall, and I grew up with nothing but rednecks, and it's just the power of it if you let it in. And I guess it's just certain guys are that vulnerable to it, or that they're just kind of geared towards it. Or maybe, like you said, maybe it's just being lonely and searching something out that brings you comfort. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I'm with you. I think a lot of it, again, for me, I think there's just so much about timing, because I didn't necessarily, until high school at least, but maybe I had some friends who were handing me good records or books or whatever. But before that, it was just, like, I didn't even have cable, but hearing like, Sinead O'Connor or something like that on the radio, I mean, that was huge for me as a kid. It really opened up opened up everything, and then made the connections quicker. Like I got to the Pogues faster than I probably would have, or I got to whoever, faster than I might have once I started down that path.
Did Willie tell you his Shane McGowan story, which is like the coolest thing in the world?
I don't know. I don't think so.
Well, I was my first book, The Motel Life, was coming out in England, and so I went over there, and I was having a reading at this bar called the Boogaloo, and I was with my wife, and Shane McGowan was there because that was his drinking bar at the time.
Yeah.
And I'd heard, it could be really mean and say cruel shit, and I loved him, man. I always loved the Pogues, and I thought, because again,
me too.
Because there's an anger and a romanticism that kind of, and a craftsmanship. So he weaves like punk rock anger, but he's got that romanticism of like a Cole Porter kind of, like those old school songwriters. And anyway, he's there, and I was so worried he would like make fun of me, that I had my gal, man, she stood next to him. I go, you got to stand next to him. And if he starts saying mean shit, you got to hit him or get him to stop. Cause I don't think I could take him making fun of me. Cause I'd never done readings before, really. Like this was all kind of new to me. And, and so I was really insecure. I'm a fucking shy guy anyway. And, anyway, he was really nice. He said some nice things to me. And then he came up afterwards and, he stole one of my books, like when I was signing them, which, man, it made me so happy. And then he kissed my hand. And I swear,
oh my God,
it was like, it's so kind of weird, and I'd never felt this before. I mean, maybe like when you first fall in love or something, like you walk around and you're like, I just spent the night with a girl naked in a bed, and you're like in heaven, right? But after he kissed my hand, I went back to the hotel, and I was just like, my fucking arm was shaking. And I was like, I felt like it was so weird because, I wasn't used to anything like that. And it was the first time I'd ever stayed in a nice hotel. And I just I couldn't sleep the whole fucking night. I couldn't sleep. I just walked around knowing that Shane McGowan kissed my hand. And it was just, oh man, it was something else.
It's a good thing you didn't hear like that Muttley laugh while you were reading.
Yeah. And he didn't say like, this guy's a fucking idiot,
Oh man. No, that's amazing, man. Yeah, he's been one of my heroes for a long time. Well, I don't know if I should use the word hero, but he's been one of my favorites for a long time.
Yeah. He's a bad hero to have, but he's a great songwriter.
Oh my
gosh.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. I had you were talking about having an early, Willie, you said it was your brother. I was really lucky because I had an uncle who, he played in garage bands in the 60s and stuff. And when I was like 10 and 11 for Christmas, he would say, all right, I think you're ready for this, and he would give me like, Are You Experienced? Or, the Doors album. And I remember when I was 12, I asked him to get me the Cars album, Candy-O, which has that cool Vargas cover on it. And he's like, I'm not sure if I should do that. It's just so risque for a 12-year-old. I recently bought a copy of that album again after all these years. Great stuff. I wanted to ask you, Bill, about, now you live in Oxford, Mississippi, and how did you make the journey from Brooklyn to Oxford?
Well, I'll try to keep it real short, but basically, when I was in college, I got into art guys like R.L. Burnside and Junior Kimbrough and T-Model Ford. It was just kind of, again, I'd walk in. I lived in a town in the Hudson Valley in New York where I went to a small state school called SUNY New Paltz, and there were two good record stores in town, and I would go in there and I just kind of take chances on stuff if I had a little dough to spend. And so I found those guys that way. And so that was kind of the first reason that Oxford was on my map, because I knew they were from around the area. But then, when I was probably 22 or so, my wife and I moved to Austin, Texas for a year. And while I was there, I saw the movie Big Bad Love. And all I knew about it was that Tom Waits was on the soundtrack, and I liked Deborah Winger and I liked Darlis Howard, and so I came out of that theater and I liked the movie, but I went immediately to Book People in Austin and got Big Bad Love, the Larry Brown story collection, and that was just the beginning of Larry Brown being my favorite writer, and I kind of just totally absorbed everything he'd written, and Oxford got to be a place I wanted to come, and then I got to read other writers like Barry Hannah and Tom Franklin, and I knew those guys were here, so I kind of set my sights on Oxford, and I came down here in 2008 and got to take Larry Brown was a few years gone already at that point, unfortunately, but I knew Square Books, which is one of the great independent bookstores in the country, because of Larry Brown's work. So I came down here and I wanted to be here, and I got to take some classes with those writers, and I just kind of we kept thinking we were going to leave Oxford, and we kept staying. It's a really it's a really good town, full of especially book town, and there's just so many great writer friends I've got here. Our mutual friend Asa Atkins, Tom Franklin, Jack Pendarvis, Mary Miller, Melissa Ginsburg, Chris Offutt, Michael Ferris Smith. The list goes on. It's like all the people I'd be reading anyway, and they all live here. It's crazy. It's a crazy place in that way.
I love Ferris Smith. What a writer.
Oh, he's terrific. Yeah.
It seems like, I don't know, this could be a stretch, but I was thinking about this. Your books, I love books like Winesburg, Ohio, and that are all about communities like your Brooklyn and Kennedy's Albany. I detect in your work, obviously there's all sorts of weird different influences that creep in. There's a European sensibility I can detect in your work, but also a Southern sensibility. And I don't know if I can articulate it, but you think about, the Faulkner world, and is that on point at all, or?
No, yeah, totally. And I think I did, I read a lot of, New York writers, but I think probably I'm kind of a little bit stuck in time with New York writers. Like I tend to read writers from kind of mid-century or before, and really respond to that. But Southern fiction was huge for me. And like I said, Larry Brown was kind of, he was a big discovery for me. And once I read Joe and Father and Son, I knew those were the kinds of books I wanted to write. And I wanted to write, like I specifically, wanted to write about, when I sat down to work on Gravesend, I was wanting to write about my part of Brooklyn and the way that Larry Brown wrote about North Mississippi, because I hadn't seen anybody really, most of the contemporary Brooklyn fiction I was seeing was not like that, or didn't feel like that. So he was huge. I love, Flannery O'Connor. I love Faulkner. Definitely, with Yoknapatawpha County, there's a big model there in terms of what I'm trying to do. Carson McCullers is one of my favorite writers. I absolutely love her. Walker Percy was a big one for me. They're just kind of, William Gay was huge. Just so many, many Southern.
Are you guys, both of you, hip to, there was an Arkansas writer. I'm sure we all love Daniel Woodrell.
Oh yeah.
But there's another writer that never gets his due, Donald Harrington. Do you know his stuff?
Oh yeah.
The Quiring of the Trees, and he has that community of Stay More, which is kind of what I'm trying to talk about, not very well. That.
Yeah.
Community.
Yeah, I think does he teach in Fayetteville? I think he was, if I'm not mistaken, I think he was like,
he went on to his reward some time ago, but
okay, I don't know. I know his name, but I don't know him that well. But even
he has a book called The Architecture of the Arkansas Ozarks, which I think is a great title.
That is a great title.
Cockroaches of Stay More.
Oh no, yeah, I've never read him, but I will check him out. Lewis Norton is another Mississippi writer who I love, who I think about his stuff a lot. And then writers like I mean, just kind of all over the place. I mean, just such a big influence. Richard Wright, I love, I love a lot of Harry Cruz. I love. I mean, there was just definitely a way I felt that people were writing about the South that I didn't so much see people writing about where I was from anymore. I mean, there was a history of it that, especially in kind of the 30s, 40s, and the 50s, that kind of evaporated, I think, and became more of kind of every Brooklyn novel was like a, kind of upper crust literary novel, and there was no more kind of, working class fiction or even crime, certain kind of crime fiction that, character driven crime fiction didn't really exist in the way maybe that it had. So it was definitely a huge influence on me.
I know we're kind of running out of time, and Willie, you probably have band members milling about out there.
No, man, guy, you were right, because it was daylight savings time. So
You got another hour?
yeah.
You guys practice at your place?
No, we practice it. The keyboardist Corey has a studio. So, but I'm in my little office in Portland because my internet's so bad out where I live. I wouldn't be able to see you guys.
Oh, okay. How's Amy doing? She's
good. She's
full
good.
recovery?
She's full recovery. We just found out today, we in the UK, our single is in the top 10 of the physical
Wow.
sales. It's number 10.
Amazing.
Yeah,
Man, that's awesome.
Yeah, man, it's pretty funny, and I don't know what that means, but hey, it's something. And so yeah, we're all right. We're a small time band trying to, keep it together, but we're doing good. She's doing great.
That's great. You guys had a kind of a surreal Arizona and Portland flip-flopped their summers.
Yeah.
You guys had these 115 degree craziness, and we had a real wet summer here.
Which is good for you guys. Yeah, it was 115. It was like the end of the world. It was really scary, and like, I live at kind of the edge of the coast range in the rainforest, and it didn't rain for like 130 days or something like that. And so you start worrying about the poor trees are gonna get zapped by the sun and then fall down on your house.
It's the day of the locust, man.
Yeah, that was a good writer.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I love Nathaniel West, man.
Yeah, me too, man.
John Fonte and.
Yeah, Fonte is a huge one for me.
Yeah, well, it's kind of as we. Is there anything else I really wanted to go? We've talked about a lot of different stuff. One writer I wanted to bring up, he's a really good friend of mine, and you guys probably know his work, but his name is James Salas. Do you know?
Oh yeah, I love James Salas. Yeah.
And he's kind of reminds me of you, Bill, in that he's a polymath. I mean, he's read everything, he's seen everything, and just he draws from all these different interesting influences. And it seems like all three of you guys are kindred spirits. If you've never read him, Willie, you'd love.
No, I have, but not for years.
Yeah.
But my problem is the great thing about Bill, man, is he can remember everything.
I know.
It's just so damn fun to be around because I've been like, when he and I talked, he had a list of instrumental music that he listens to when he's writing, and I cut it out and I taped it on in my house so I could remember to go down the list, because my problem is I don't have that great a memory for that. I used to, like, with musicians. Like a guy in my band, he's 51, and even now he can remember like who played on a record, from like like some record from the 70s that no one's heard of. He'll go, oh, that guy, Bob Jenkins. Nah, he didn't play that session because he got an appendix. His appendix blew up. So they brought in Joe Blow, and he'll remember that kind of shit from just like weird funk records from the 70s. He's amazing. And you're like that, Bill.
I don't know if I'm like that. I wish I could be like that, but I think I'm with that kind of stuff. Like if there's repetition involved, or if things are fresh in my mind, I have a good memory. But I often feel like I don't retain stuff nearly as well as I want to. I wish I could remember like that.
Hey man, I got to show you one thing real quick. You probably can't see it. It's right there. It's Wanda. I bought
Oh, nice.
I bought the poster of Wanda, so I could.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I love
I
that
just
movie.
I just rewatched it like 3 nights ago. I love that movie so much.
Yeah, she's the most heartbreaking person. But yeah, you turned me onto that movie, and I think about her all the time. That kind of hopelessness and powerlessness that leads you just to not even try at all, just to be so ill at ease in the world that she just kind of wanders through. It's just, that movie really meant a lot to me.
Oh man, I'm glad. Yeah, I remember that I think that was just when you were here, right? In Oxford, you watched it, right?
Yeah, you go, man, watch this movie called Wanda. And I go, all right. Because when you give me a recommendation, I always go, it's got to be good, or yeah.
When did that come out? Is that a recent film?
Yeah, it's from 1970. It was the only movie written and directed by Barbara Loden, but it was kind of like not lost really, but not easy to see for a long time, and then it got back in the public eye a little bit, and Criterion reissued it a few years ago. So now you can see it on like Criterion Channel or Canopy, I think maybe.
Yeah, and the Criterion has a documentary on her, a little documentary that's really interesting. She seems like really cool, really smart.
Yeah, and it's great. I mean, it's kind of unexpected. I think when you start it, it feels like it's going to be a certain kind of thing, which it is, but it's also kind of a great crime story.
Yeah.
And it's based a little bit on a true story. The writer Sarah Weinman wrote an essay about the true story the true story that inspired Barbara Loden to make this movie. But it's great. It's a great film. One of my favorites.
Wow, have to look that up. I'm just kind of keeping an eye on the comments, and a good friend of mine, Steve, is watching, and he says, and he's also a really good writer himself. He says both of these authors present an empathy that borders on benediction. The beauty of the prose is almost at times unbearable, and yet the character's humanity shines through. It's a nice comment.
Jesus,
yeah. Thanks. Oh man, thanks, Steve. That means a lot.
Yeah, it's funny because we've been doing a discussion group here at the bookstore for the last 20 years. It's all about noir and hard-boiled crime and that sort of thing. And he's been in it for many years and just a good friend.
Oh, that's so cool, man.
And of exquisite taste and discernment. Well, let's go ahead and sign off here. But what are you both working on? What's new? Let's start with you, Willie. What's new book-wise and music-wise?
Book-wise, I'm drafted to just a novel about a house painter in Portland, and I think it's okay. I think it's going all right. Today it's going okay. And then my band, The Delines, has a record coming out in February called The Sea Drift, and we're going to be touring that all next year if COVID lets us. So I'll be busy with that. So just kind of the same old stuff with me, just kind of slowly stumbling around doing stuff. Hoping it doesn't blow up.
Any new film stuff?
No.
No. So you ever going to tour the States? God damn it.
I don't know.
We'll go to Europe.
Well, we do better over there, and it's really hard to get the band in the van in the U.S. to play shows that everybody knows aren't going to do very well. So I don't know. We probably will for this record. We're doing kind of a bigger push for this record if COVID allows. So yeah, we'll be doing some shows, but I don't know.
Maybe Patterson would take you guys out on the road with them.
Wouldn't that be nice, man?
That'd be an interesting pairing too.
Yeah, it would be nice, man. I don't know. That would be nice.
That'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah. Bill, what about you? I know this is just out, but a man of your work ethic, what do you got going on?
And I'm kind of like 2/3 of the way through a draft of a new book. I don't know. I'm kind of both superstitious and bad at talking about works in progress, but it's it's late 70s, Brooklyn, kind of a little bit of a dark fairy tale or folk tale of New York. And I don't have too much else I can say about it, because I kind of got, I mean, it's kind of been one of those, I had a good streak of getting work done, and then other stuff got in the way. So I kind of got separated from it a little bit in the last couple of months, and I need to get back to it and just finish it. So I'm hoping to have some time to do that here at the end of the year. Beyond that, I've just been writing a lot of essays and stuff for the book and lists. And I wrote a short story that's coming out in the Southwest Review next month called Getting Mercied. So that's something new that'll be out soon. But yeah, beyond that, I got this. I want to get this novel done, and then I got another one that I'm pretty much, that's knocking at the door, that I want to get going on right away. So I've been thinking about it for a while now. So
That's awesome. Are you still? I know probably you quit this long ago, but I know that you were working like a day a week or something in a record store. Do you still have a toe in that water?
yeah, I worked for like 7 years at the End of All Music, which is the great record store in Oxford. I stopped late 2019, so kind of timing wise, probably not too long before COVID, which probably would have forced me to stop. I mean, it would have forced me to stop anyway. So I'm not there anymore. I miss it a lot. It was I was usually there only a day or two a week, but it was kind of a nice way to force myself to be social and meet people and talk about music. And it's one of the coolest places, because you really never know who's going to come through that record store, because there's so many. I mean, it's a college town. It's an independent record store in a college town, so you do get a lot of just like college kids coming in. But you also, because it's in Mississippi and it's kind of on the Blues Trail, you get tourists from all over the world. And just like on a given random night, anybody could walk in there from anywhere. And then also before COVID, like, any writer who was in town, any film people who were ever in town, everybody's coming through there. So it was just such a cool way to hang out with people and meet people.
I'd love to get there. Ace keeps inviting me to come out and stay with them, and I've never been to Oxford. And I think I'd really love it there.
Yeah, man, you should come. Definitely come. It's a good place, and it can be there's some magic nights in Oxford that are just really just hard. Makes it hard to leave this place.
I mean, to me, man, it's one of the coolest. You should go, because it's one of the coolest towns when you think of how much great stuff's come out of there, how many great writers are there. I mean, I remember just being at a bar one night, and then Barry Hanna just walks up, and then Tom Franklin's there, and you're like, oh my God. And they're just normal guys at a bar. And then Square Books is probably one of my favorite, if not one of the best bookstores, like you said, in the nation. So yeah, you should check it out.
New and used, or is it just new?
Yeah, they have, and this tells you everything you need to know about Oxford. There are 4 locations for Square Books on the square within 100 or 200 feet of each other. There's the new bookstore, the used bookstore, the children's bookstore, and then a rare square, which is all rare books.
Shit, maybe they'd let me do like a Poison Pen annex as part of Square, like do the crime part.
Yeah, man, that would be cool.
Man.
Anyway, thanks so much, both of you guys. I really appreciate it. Here are both these wonderful books, and I've signed copies. I think I have one that's signed by you, Willie, still.
Hey, Bill, congratulations.
Oh, thanks, man. It's so good to see you. Thanks for doing this. I appreciate it.
Sure, man. Sure. I'm not that articulate today, but I'm really happy for your book. I really love the book, and I think you're just a tremendous writer. So I wish you the best of luck with it.
Thanks, man. You know how much I love your work. And I didn't say this during the thing, but I think I read The Night Always Comes 3 times while I was working on Shoot the Moonlight Out. So I hope some of the magic of that book rubbed off on my book a little bit.
Oh man, that makes me feel good, man.
Thank you, man. Thank you, Patrick. Thanks for having me.
You bet.
Yeah,
Thanks so
man.
much, guys. And it's good to finally meet you in person or virtually, Bill.
Yeah,
We'll have to do
I
this
hope
in person.
definitely. Yeah, I hope I can come out there with Ace or something one day down the road, and
Yeah.
could all hang out and do an event and just have have a good time.
Be a blast. Yeah.
Yeah.
Listen to weirdo music.
Yeah.
Yeah, you got great. Patrick's got it. He's another guy with amazing taste. Yeah,
I
man.
know. Yeah.
Poison
We've been
Pen's
talking.
one, and Poison Pen's one of the coolest bookstores I've ever been into.
Oh yeah, I've known about. I mean, I've known about it forever, and I've actually never been to Arizona, so I've never gotten out there. So, but I really want to.
All right, guys.
All right, man.
Thanks so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys.
And thanks everybody for